Serious, rural folk, what is the most creepy thing you've seen or experienced? I live in rural Wisconsin, surrounded by corn, marsh, the works. I remember I was in my teens outside at dusk with my parents, but we were all doing our own thing. Suddenly a woman's voice yells, "Help me!" from the woods beside our house. Just loud enough to hear, but quiet enough for me to second guess what I heard. My mom and dad both turned to look at me like, "You heard that too, right?" Mom starts screaming, "Do you need help? Where are you?" It's moved from dusk to pitch black now, and the hair stood up on my neck because it got too quiet. Mom wanted to keep yelling, but Dad just got up from his chair and said, "Inside." I think that's one of the only times I've seen her listen to him. A bit late to this thread, but I've never had an opportunity to share this story. My wife and I met in a small rural town on Lake Superior, and when we were ready to move in together, we purchased a remote cabin about 40 minutes out of town. It was an incredibly idyllic and peaceful existence for 2 years when we decided it was time to move closer to family. We had packed all of our items except for 2 mason jars we had used for celebratory glasses of wine on our last night. When we woke up the next morning, both glasses were destroyed throughout our dining room. It was not like a normal fall with pieces of glass on the floor. There were shards in other rooms, on windowsills 10 feet away from the table, and some pieces of glass were ground into a fine powder. I cannot think of a logical explanation of what happened. Whatever would have created the force to do that damage to the glasses would have woken us up. I'm absolutely at a loss of what happened and still think about it frequently all these years later. The blood-curdling scream of something being killed by coyotes, then all of a sudden it stops and there's dead silence. Just a few weeks ago, just had a black snake wrapped on my outside doorknob when I opened it. I guess it was trying to get to the nest of flycatchers beneath the porch roof. A friend of mine lived in a semi-rural area growing up. One night the cops knocked on her door and warned her that they were looking for a possibly violent fugitive. Told her they'd check her property and that she should lock up and be wary. It wasn't until some time later that she found out the full story. The fugitive had been caught sexually assaulting a horse in a local stable. In the ensuing panic, the horse's leg was broken and the man got away. He was found 2 days later hiding in a stormwater drain. My family lives in an old farmhouse surrounded by a lake, field, and forest. No neighbors nearby. No reason for outsiders being near. It's a dead-end road. This happened to my aunt when she was dog-sitting. She wakes up in the middle of the night to some noises. Our dogs were less than helpful guard dog, and she didn't alert her at all. Aunt sees several people outside with flashlights walking around the yard. She panics and immediately puts on all the lights and the people escape. She called the cops, but it would have taken them an hour to get there. Nothing was taken, but sure scared the hell out of my aunt. I used to live 30 minutes away from where I am now in the Philippines, and back then there weren't any convenience stores or supermarkets nearby in my village. It was just all grass, trees, and vines. Perfect if you want to hide mutilated or sacked bodies. One day, my parents and I drove home from my preschool. Suddenly my dad went silent and told me not to look. I was stupid enough to disobey and saw someone hanging from the trees with their neck. We learned later on that people were killing themselves because of destitution and personal conflict. My grandparents' cottage is in Turkish Mediterranean region, and it lies in lemon and orange trees. We have 2 close neighbors, and other settlements are quite far, and the 2 neighbors aren't present since it's summer and they moved to upland, which is cooler. Now, the cottage is old, really old. It was built on a large rock and it has no toilets inside. Toilet is about 20 meters outside in the south like Shrek's. Well, I had to use it in the middle of the night and there is no light. I had to navigate using moonlight and there's no light in the toilet either. You wouldn't know what's inside until your eyes get used to the dark. When I was in, I heard footsteps or something crawling outside because dry grass was making noise. Whatever it is approached to the door and stood there for a solid 20 minutes. Now, since where I stayed was way secluded and the closest town was 1 hour of driving, and in the fields we have seen wild boars, snakes, and wild dogs too. I stayed in there for an hour after the animal left and rushed out to home, but my legs were asleep. Crawled until I could walk again. I was 12 or 13 at the time. I used to live in the desert for a year. And on nights when the moon isn't out or there are clouds blocking out the stars and moon, it's almost pitch black. You can't see more than 10 yards ahead of you. One night I was driving down the highway going home, and then suddenly in my headlights I see a guy running on the side of the highway full on sprinting. I'm doing 70 miles per hour, so it's only for a second or two, but I'm like, what the hell was he running from? I hope he's okay because I'm not pulling over LMAO. But then maybe a minute later, I see another guy in my headlights, only he's walking on the side of the highway, and I swear to God, it looked like the same guy. Two separate guys in the dark walking, running on the side of the highway? What possible reason could explain that? I didn't see any cars on the side of the road that might have broken down. I was so weirded out, I just had an uncomfortable feeling the entire ride home. Depending on the beholder, this is a ballsy or stupid story I can throw in the mix of all these close animal encounters on here. I lived out of a camper shell I built on the back of a small Japanese pickup I own. Did this with some breaks of couch surfing in between for about 8.5 months, east to west coast and lots of places in between. I was doing some work on a guy's house in Sonora, California. He and his family were the coolest of Mormons, and they actually offered that I just park anywhere I like on their 8 acres of property until we got their house finished up to be put on the market. Having a stable campsite, I changed things up and would sleep in my hammock beside my truck. Weather was perfect that time of year. The guy's wife saw me in my hammock on the first morning and made it a point to tell me about the 2 goats they had lost to a mountain lion the year prior. One day at dusk, while I was there, she and her son got a mountain lion walking up the driveway on video. It was back. I knew the risk, but figured it's far too scared of human smells and lights and sound to ever realistically mean problems for me, which is the case for 99% of those cats. Just to be noisy before bed, and you're set. After lights out, at night I'd sit and browse the web for a while in the cab of my truck, and I could charge my electronics from the inverter I had in there. I wasn't done going in and out of the camper shell in the bed of my truck, so I'd left both tailgate and hatch wide open. It was well into the night. I'm just reading away, and all of a sudden, my entire truck lurches from a dip in the rear end. Something is in the back of my truck. I've shuttled people around back there, and I have a good sense of how the rear leaf springs down under weight in this truck because I've owned it for so long, and it was as if a slightly less than or equal to 200-pound man plopped his ass on my tailgate. Oh shit. First thought is it's a person. Didn't think it at the time, but there's no way it's a person. I'm parked on crushed gravel. That gives away the approach of anything putting body weight on it, unless this person was being intentionally sneaky. But that gets thrown to the wind with the jump onto the tailgate, so it wasn't a dude. A useless wide-eyed check of my mirrors sent me thinking of a better plan. I'm not getting out of the cab. Manually lock both doors, old truck. My keys are already on accessory to run charging, so less than an eighth of a turn to the key and the truck is running. I rev the thing in accordance with my heart rate, but I don't blast a horn because I don't want to wake this family and their 5 young kids up. Plan works and the truck springs back unweighted. Shut the truck off and weighted thing out a good while, all clear. The ballsy, stupid part comes now. I was 21. This was my adventure I had dreamed about since I was a kid. I don't have wild behaviors, but I honestly feel all but dead inside until I face some kind of challenge or adversity and I'll come alive. Grew up watching too many movies or something. All my favorites share the common theme. Anyway, I didn't want to back down. Slight dehydration was on my side, and I knew my piss was going to smell a little stronger because of it. I pissed all over the trees my hammock was strapped to, and underneath and in a little sea bear circle around the hammock itself. And I did that every night for the next 2 weeks with no problem until we finished the job. It was ballsy then, but it's stupid now. The reality, though, is that anyone who sleeps outdoors in their habitat for any amount of days more than 1 out of the year has slept in a mountain lion's territory, likely under 1. In terms of hillside, not trees, the consensus around them is that they see you. You don't see them. Could have told that story so much shorter, but it's true, and storytelling is a lot of fun. This Ask turned into real-life campfire stories quick. I lived way out in the country when I was 15 years old, so way out it would take us an hour to get to the closest grocery store, and it would take the cops 45 minutes to get to our house. No neighbors close by. If something happened, no one would hear you scream. One night, I got a gut feeling in my stomach that something wasn't right. I ignored it and went to sleep, thinking it was just anxiety. Then I wake up to a blood-curdling scream at 2 a.m. I was absolutely terrified. These screams were demonic, switching between a high-pitched screech of a woman to a growl of a man. My entire family woke up, and my stepdad got his shotgun. My stepdad went outside. Mind you, this is the country, and there are no streetlights. It is pitch black other than the porch light above us. The screaming and screeching continues. It sounds like 2 people. My sister had gone out with her boyfriend earlier that day and still hadn't returned. Based off the screaming, my mom thought my sister was being murdered in the woods by her then boyfriend. My mom started screaming, "Jason," fake name, "Jason, you let go of her. Get your hands off her. Where are you?" Then it goes absolutely silent. We're so scared thinking she's dead, and he's coming for us next. Then another noise begins, and it's the voice of a man or demon. He yells, "I am Jacob. I am the Son of God. I am chosen to find the baby. Only I can make this passage. Only I can find this baby in Valine." Now, we're really scared thinking my sister's boyfriend is part of a cult and going to kill us all. My mom finally calls the police. All the while, this person is screeching and howling and creeping closer and closer to our house. After about 30 minutes of this, we finally see the outline of a person in our field of vision, right next to our car. My stepdad shoots near, yells, "Don't you get any closer now." Person creeps closer. Stepdad shoots closer. "Now don't make me kill you," he yells. With that second shot, we hear the person run back up the woods, and we wait for the police to arrive. Finally, after 45 minutes, the police car comes through and shines lights on the perpetrator. We cannot believe what we see. It is a skinny, completely naked, shaved head man, crawling on all fours like a gorilla, or like Gollum in LOTR. It's that easy to picture. The police grab him screeching and howling the entire time. The cops didn't even come down to explain what was happening. They just took off, and we had to go back to sleep like nothing happened. The next day, we have to call the police to find out what happened and who this was. Apparently, this was one of our neighbors who was a repeat drug offender. Our neighbor mixed a bunch of drugs together and tripped out a little too hard. It was actually unfortunate to hear he succumbed to his addictions a couple of years later. He was very young. This was a terrifying night, and for those that don't live in the country, this is the true horrors we have to face: unemployment, drug and alcohol addictions, and domestic abuse. These issues can run rampant in rural areas, and I hope our areas will get better one day. So a long time ago, I was at a friend's ranch-style house on a little bit of land, and it was time for me to head home. Walked outside, and it's close to midnight, but the moon is almost full, so it's really bright. I'm parked back in the sticks a little bit, so it took me a second to get there, and as I near my truck, I hear a low growl or snort, and this beating of feet against the ground. Super loud, but not as loud as a horse, nor as steady. Just kept getting louder and louder. I get a little freaked out, so I run to my truck and fumble my keys, getting them out of my pocket, and they fall to the ground just like some horror movie. I bend over to grab them, and that's when I see something about as tall as my waist round the end of my pickup bed. I immediately knew it was a fucking werewolf, and that was it for me. So this beast just slams into me, knocks me to the ground, and jacked up my elbow. And that's how I met Cookie, the Great Dane. Apparently, she belonged to an elderly couple about 40 acres over and would get bored and get out of the fence. I ran in to grab my friends, and we played with her another hour before I headed home. Cookie became a staple around the ranch house, and she always would wait for us when we pulled up. Side note, is it weird, or has anyone else had interactions with unknown creatures and just thought, "God damn, that's a monster, I'm fucked," for like just a split second? Seems like I have a bunch of those. My little brother and I were tossing a baseball around near dusk at the bottom of our property, 30 wooded mountain acres way in the middle of nowhere. It had gotten dark enough that we were just about to call it quits when we heard the single most horrifying scream we've ever heard, before or since, from the trees just beyond the edges of the clearing. Imagine a woman screaming in mortal agony, writhing in the most wretched torment imaginable. Every tortured scream from horror movies, war movies, anything you've ever heard, nothing compared to this. Even now, decades removed from hearing it, the hair on my arms and neck stand up just thinking of it, and it's made even worse by the realization of what it actually was: a mountain lion. Full-grown female mountain lions scream loudly when they're in heat, and it sounds like a human woman being torn to pieces by the devil himself. To hear that, 2 kids alone in the dark in the middle of nowhere was about as terrifying as it gets.